We call this the old home grounds because people always would go to the Myakka River. It's special because it's special to the people. My name is Paula Benshoff. I'm a Park Service Specialist at Myakka River State Park. I was born in Tampa, Florida. Both of my parents were born in Florida, and all of my grandparents were born in Florida. I would say that would make me a native Floridian. A lot of people are patriotic for being Americans. I think people from Florida very often are patriotic for being Floridians. I came to Sarasota when I was in third grade. I've lived in Sarasota since the third grade, except for the time that my husband was in the Navy, and then we were out of the state for about 4 years. Of course, we walked to school, we walked everywhere. We spent our weekends walking to the beach, up and down the beach, and then back to the mainland. We would probably walk 8 hours a day. If you grow up in the woods in Florida, you spend your days building forts and playing in the woods and swimming in the river, and you don't think about that as being an environmental interest. You think of that as just normal play. It was a different time back then. Black people weren't allowed in the state park. If they wanted to go picnicking, they had to go across the street in what we called youth campground. They would, if you wanted to go fishing, they could only fish a certain location. You know, everything was very segregated. Back, if I wanted to drink out of a water fountain, I would be very thirsty and not drink out of a water fountain because I couldn't read the sign, which one was the colored sign and which one was the white sign. It was just a part of life. So the first time that I remember coming to Myakka River State Park was with my husband before we were married, and we came and picnicked at the Myakka River back behind the log pavilion. That was also the first time that I saw an alligator in the wild. Which just seems odd for someone that's born and raised in Florida not to see alligators in the wild. But, you know, before they really cracked down on poachers in Florida, you didn't see alligators commonly at all between, say, the 1950s and the late 1970s. I started working at Myakka River State Park in 1980. Prior to that, I had worked at the Division of Forestry, and so was familiar with the park through my job that way. I was a dispatcher, so I was aware when they were burning at Myakka River, the forest rangers would come out and help the park rangers burn. And one of the forest rangers lived right across the street from Myakka River State Park. So he was kind of my intimate contact with the park. In fact, he's the one that suggested that I work here and talked to the park manager and decided, you know, I think it was his influence that got me the job here. When I first started working at the park, I was afraid of everything. I didn't know how I was going to be a park ranger because I was afraid to walk in the palmettos because I just knew that I was going to be bit by a rattlesnake. Whenever I was working what we call swing shift at night, I would hear noises that just scared me to death. One time I went to a Clay Gully picnic area, and I got out to go check the restroom, and I heard this long moaning groan that had to have been a ghost, I thought then, and jumped in my car and drove away real fast. It was the plumbing, by the way. The truth is, I really believe that it's important to take care of our nature areas. I think one of the things that I enjoy most of my job is having now the experience and the knowledge to be able to look and see what the land needs and having the power to get that for the land. So feeling like I'm effective in actually accomplishing something that's important. Myakka is large enough that it doesn't just protect a little piece of nature so people can see what nature looks like. It has kind of an ecosystem that works. It has all the pieces, plus it has the natural processes, and those natural processes are allowed to work. Fire and flood and predation and larger carnivores, and all that's all going on so that you're not just looking at what's there, but you're looking at how it works. And so therefore, it's a way of learning about the natural systems, not from a book, but from actually observing it. The river is the mascot or the icon for the watershed, for the Myakka Island. We've got this huge place that is a natural area, and it's the river that represents it. So it's like one time someone told me, they were talking about scrub jays, and I said, why is the scrub jay so important? It's not the scrub jay that's important. What's important is the scrub, and you use the scrub jay for people to fall in love with the scrub jay, and therefore they'll protect the scrub. Otherwise, they could care less about the scrub. So I think the Myakka River is in a sense the same way. If they fall in love with the river, then they'll want to protect the larger ecosystem in which it's just a small part of. You know, historically, people had their bond with their land because it was their ancestral landscape, and it didn't mean you didn't have to own it, but because you were from there, not only did you think of yourself as part of the land, and it is part of you. And nowadays what happens is wherever you live, you weren't born and you probably weren't raised, and it's such a very short-term existence that I think people have a hard time bonding with a piece of land, or especially natural areas. And I think that's really bad because there's nobody out there wanting to protect it as strongly. I mean, people want to protect natural areas, but you have to have an affinity for one place. And so everybody has to find that special thing that makes you bond with the land. And there's this little girl that I bring into the park all the time, and for her, Myakka is a fairyland. She can show me where the fairies make their nest. She can show me where they have their parties. She can show me where they take a swim. And it's her fairyland, and it doesn't belong to anybody else. And so the more different ways that people connect with Myakka, then the more likelihood that that feeling of wanting it to be forever will keep going. There are a lot of people who come here and say, where's the mountains? God, this is ugly. So everybody has their own perception of beauty. And you know, they wanted to make this a national park. The local citizens wrote to the national park system, and from what I understand the story goes, is the national park system said, well, you don't have any geysers, and you don't have, you know, any huge mountains or deep gullies. There's really nothing there, so we're not really interested. So luckily the state park system came into being the same year. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and you just have to find ways to show that beauty to people. And one time I had a group that I took out on the prairie, and the prairie is really quite desolate at times because it's hot in the summer, you sweat, it's flooded, you don't ever see wildlife because it stays hidden during the day. So it has a special beauty that a lot of people don't see. And so we went and we talked about fire, we talked about wildflowers, and we came back, and this one person said to me, you know, when we went out, the prairie was ugly, and when we got back, it's one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. It's like I saw it through your eyes, and all of a sudden, it was a completely different place. So there's a reward in being able to sort of open up the blinders for people to be able to see what's really out there. Yeah. When you go to many state parks, it feels like to me that the state park is a place to go and recreate, something to do today. Whereas I've always felt that for the community that Myakka is more than that. I think that the community really takes possession and feels that it belongs to them. Myakka is the river. Myakka is the prairie. Myakka is the vast tract of wilderness that's left. Myakka is being connected to other pieces and putting it all together in a whole, and a way of keeping something that feels at least like wilderness. That's it.